All right, so you're thinking about diving into the world of electrical equipment assembly.
It's a field that's really buzzing right now.
It is, and we're going to give you a deep dive into what it takes to absolutely nail that interview.
Because it's more than just connecting the dots.
Exactly. So we're plugging into RoleCatcher's insights, those interview questions, the career guides, all that good stuff.
To give you that extra spark.
Okay, so picture this. You're walking into the interview room, and they hit you with, tell me about your experience with electrical schematics and blueprints.
Classic.
It's like the ABCs of the job, right?
It is. And what they're really asking is, can you read these blueprints like a roadmap?
So how do you make your answer really stand out?
Think of a specific project where you relied heavily on those schematics. Like, what was the situation, the task you had to tackle, what actions did you take, and what was the outcome? The STAR method? It's your best friend.
So let's say you were putting together control panels for some heavy-duty machinery. It's pretty standard stuff in this field.
For sure. You could say something like, in my previous role, I was assembling these control panels, which meant using schematics to make sure I had the right parts, that the wiring was spot on, and to troubleshoot any hiccups.
Gotcha. So you're not just saying you've seen a schematic, you're showing them you can use it.
Exactly. And notice how we're already slipping in some problem-solving skills there.
Subtle. I like it.
Interviewers love that. They might even ask, tell me about a time you found an error in a schematic.
Oh, that's a good one. A real test.
Absolutely. And that's where you show them your attention to detail. Did you double check? Did you maybe have to consult with an engineer, find a workaround while staying safe?
It's like proving you can think on your feet.
Mm.
Because let's face it, in this line of work.
Stuff happens.
Exactly. And speaking of staying ahead of the game, RoleCatcher's AI platform. It's like having a secret weapon for crafting your responses.
Oh, for sure. You can practice answering tough questions like that and get personalized feedback.
Like having a personal coach in your back pocket.
Wow.
So we've tackled blueprints, but what about safety? It's not just a suggestion when you're dealing with electrical equipment, right?
It's everything. It could literally be a matter of life or death.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher highlights this too, with questions like, how do you make sure equipment is assembled correctly, and safely?
Huge. A strong answer there shows you know the rules of the game. Do you have a checklist? Do you double-check every connection? Make sure you're using the right tools and gear.
Right. Because it's not enough to just get the job done. It's got to be done right.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to get a little technical here. Mention industry standards, OSHA guidelines, things like that. It shows you're not just following orders, but you get it.
Speaking my language. Now, I bet they might ask, walk me through how you test a newly assembled piece of equipment.
It's all about showing them your process. Do you use specific testing equipment like a multimeter? Are there steps you take every single time to make sure everything's working as it should?
So again, concrete examples really make your answer stronger.
100%.
Now, remember how we mentioned RoleCatcher's AI features?
Mm.
Well, imagine this. You can use their platform to actually practice explaining that testing process, and the AI gives you feedback.
It's like having someone who's sat through hundreds of interviews giving you pointers.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
Okay, we've covered schematics, safety. Now let's talk about problem solving. I'm talking about those curveball questions like, give me an example of a time you had to troubleshoot an electrical equipment assembly issue.
Story time! This is where you get to shine.
But it's not just about telling a good story.
Right. It's about showing them how you think, how you break down a problem, how you get to a solution. Again, the STAR method is your friend here.
So set the scene, but then walk them through your thought process. Don't just say, I fixed it.
Right. You could say, we were working on a motor control circuit and the motor wouldn't start. So I went back to the schematic, checked the wiring, used a multimeter to test for continuity and voltage, and found a loose connection on the contactor. Secured the connection, motor fired right up.
See, you're not just telling them you can fix things, you're showing them.
Exactly. Be ready for follow-up questions, though. They might want to know about your most challenging troubleshooting experience and what you learned.
Oh, they're going deep.
They want to see how you handle the tough stuff, your resilience.
So have a good story ready. Something that shows how you tackled a tricky issue, what you learned, how you grew from it.
Exactly. Show them you're not just a technician, you're a problem solver.
And that you're always learning and growing. And speaking of learning and growing, let's talk about RoleCatcher again for a sec.
Okay.
Their AI can actually analyze your answers to these kinds of questions, give you feedback on how clear you are, how concise, even whether you're using the right technical terms.
So you walk into that interview feeling confident and prepared, like you've got this.
Exactly. Now, moving on from troubleshooting, time management is crucial in this field.
Absolutely. Deadlines are always looming.
And when you're talking deadlines, you know they're going to ask about quality too. It's like, can you handle the pressure? RoleCatcher even has a question about this. Something like, how do you make sure you're meeting those deadlines without sacrificing quality?
Right, because it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Okay.
This is where you show them you're organized, you know how to prioritize.
Exactly. Do you have a system? Do you break down big tasks into smaller ones?
And don't forget to emphasize that commitment to quality. You could say, look, I understand deadlines, but quality is never something I'll compromise on. I'm systematic. I double check my work. I make sure it meets the highest standards.
You're showing them you're not just fast, you're good.
Exactly. And they might push a little further. Tell me about a time you had to adjust your workflow to meet a tight deadline.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. It happens to the best of us, but this is your chance to show them you can adapt, you can collaborate. Maybe you even found a more efficient way to do things without cutting corners.
Problem solving in action.
Absolutely. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI. It can help you practice these answers, fine-tune them, make sure you're using the right industry lingo.
Your secret weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's shift gears for a sec. Staying up to date, that's huge in any technical field, especially one that's always evolving.
Absolutely. And RoleCatcher hits on this too. Something like, how do you stay current with advancements in electrical equipment technology?
Because the tech is always changing. New components, new techniques, safety regulations.
Right. So don't just say, oh, I read some magazines. Be specific. What magazines, any websites you follow, online courses, conferences, you name it.
And if you're part of any professional organizations, like the IPC, that's a big one.
Definitely mention it. Shows you're serious about your career.
Absolutely. Okay, back to safety for a sec.
Always a good idea.
Because even though we've touched on it, you know they're going to ask a direct question about it. Something like, how do you personally make sure you're following all the safety protocols?
This is where you show them safety is more than just a checklist for you. It's about being proactive. Maybe you spotted a potential hazard, or you spoke up when you saw a colleague taking a shortcut.
That's huge. It shows you're not just following rules, you're thinking about safety all the time.
Exactly. And you can mention any safety training you've had, OSHA certifications, things like that.
Adds to your credibility. And speaking of credibility, RoleCatcher's AI resume analysis can actually pick up on those safety keywords in job descriptions, making sure your resume really highlights your safety know-how.
It's like having a resume booster. Okay, let's talk complex projects. They might ask, how do you tackle a complex electrical equipment assembly project?
This is where they want to see how your brain works. Do you dive in head first, or do you have a more strategic approach?
Right. Do you map it out, break it down into smaller steps, maybe use visual aids to stay organized?
It's about showing them you can handle the big stuff without getting overwhelmed.
Exactly. And be ready for those curveballs. They might say, tell me about a time a complex project went sideways. How'd you handle it?
Oh, the dreaded failure question.
But it's not really about failure, is it? It's about how you bounce back.
Right. What did you learn? How did you grow?
Exactly. Did you have to get creative, collaborate with engineers?
This is where you show them you're a problem solver, even when things get tough.
And RoleCatcher's AI. It can help you craft the perfect story for this kind of question.
So you go in prepared to turn a potential negative into a positive.
Exactly. Now, here's one that might seem like it's only for management types. How would you manage a team of assemblers?
But even if you're not applying for a management role, this question tells them a lot about you.
Right, because it's about teamwork, communication, creating a good work environment.
Have you ever trained someone? Taken the initiative to improve a team process? Helped out a colleague?
These are all examples of leadership qualities, no matter your job title.
And it's not about bossing people around.
Definitely not. It's about being a team player, being supportive.
And don't be afraid to talk about a time you received feedback and used it to improve your teamwork skills.
Shows you're open to learning. All right, let's get real for a sec. Budgets. They might ask, how do you make sure you're staying within budget when you're assembling equipment?
Now, this is interesting because it shows you're thinking about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. Even if you're not the one managing the money, you can still be mindful of costs, right?
Do you try to avoid wasting materials? Do you report any damaged parts right away?
Maybe you even found a way to streamline the assembly process to save time and money.
Hey, that's thinking like a boss. And speaking of RoleCatcher, their AI can actually analyze job descriptions and make sure your resume highlights those budget-savvy skills.
Another point for the AI. Now, be ready for curveballs here too. They might say, Imagine you're on a project, tight budget, and you realize you need a part you didn't account for. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Right. But this is where you shine. Do you research cheaper alternatives? Get creative with modifying existing components.
Maybe talk to colleagues or suppliers.
Exactly. It's about being resourceful, not panicking,
Show them you can handle those curveballs and still deliver.
which is what it's all about. And with the right preparation, practicing those answers using tools like RoleCatcher's AI,
You'll walk into that interview feeling like you've got this.
confidence is key.
All right, so we've covered a ton in this deep dive into becoming an electrical equipment assembler, from those technical skills to those tricky behavioral questions. But before we wrap things up, I want to loop back to RoleCatcher's AI-powered tools, because they can be a game changer throughout your whole job search.
Absolutely, especially when it comes to those applicant tracking systems, those ATS things. They can feel like a bit of a mystery.
They really can.
But when you understand how they work, it can make a big difference in actually getting your resume in front of a real person.
It's true. You could have the best resume in the world, perfectly tailored to the job description, but if it's not formatted in a way that the ATS likes, it's like it doesn't even exist.
Exactly. And that's where RoleCatcher's AI comes in. It's like having a secret decoder ring. Their platform looks at those job descriptions, figures out the keywords, the skills that the employers really want to see, and then it actually helps you optimize your resume and cover letter so those keywords are front and center.
So it's like you're speaking the ATS's language without having to learn a whole new language.
Right, takes out all the guesswork, so you have a much better chance of getting through that initial screening.
And then, once you've landed the interview, don't forget about RoleCatcher's AI-powered interview practice.
Oh, yeah. It's like having a personal interview coach in your pocket.
Wow.
You can practice all kinds of common interview questions, record yourself answering them, and get personalized feedback from the AI.
That's incredible.
It is. You get insights on how clearly you're speaking, how concise you are, whether you're using those industry-specific keywords that we talked about, even your body language. It's amazing.
Wow. Technology is really changing the game when it comes to interview prep. So there you have it. We've gone from deciphering those electrical schematics all the way to handling those tricky tell me about a time when questions. You should be feeling a lot more confident about acing that electrical equipment assembler interview.
Remember, it's about showcasing your passion, showing them that you're eager to learn and grow, and that you're dedicated to delivering top-notch work.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher has those AI-powered tools to support you every step of the way. From crafting that perfect resume to delivering those confident interview answers, now go out there and build something amazing.